Howdy folks, today I'd like to take a casual peek into the Ultra Act Ultraman Zero action figure set from Bandai. This set was first released in 2010 and I do not know what the original selling price was for this set, but currently this set goes for about $40 to $60 wherever you can find them. And I found this set in 2013 at a brick-and-mortar store called Japantown Collectibles that's located in San Francisco, California. And I paid only $37 for this set. Taking a look at Ultraman Zero in the packaging, you can see the Ultraman hero here, a nice combination of colors of blue, red, and silver. And if he looks a little bit familiar, and that's because he's the son of Ultra 7. You can see a lot of the stuff inherited from his father there. It's actually kind of neat. And on the packaging here we have a nice profile image of some sort of abstract type art of Ultraman Zero, which is pretty cool. On the side of the packaging here we have a nice shot of the figure. And here we have the back of the packaging, with Ultraman Zero here in various poses, which is pretty cool. And you can see where I paid only $37 for this set. And we have insert images of more poses of Ultraman Zero, and also some pictures of the accessories that are included. And above the insert images are information about his height and weight. Ultraman Zero stands at 49 meters tall, and he weighs 35,000 tons. Pretty big fella, at least compared to us humans. And down below here we have writing in Japanese that I cannot read, unfortunately. And we'll be right back and have Ultraman Zero out of the packaging. Okay, we have Ultraman Zero out of the box, and he comes with some nice array of accessories and items. And we're going to go ahead and take a look at these items first. We'll start out with the pamphlet sheet that's included. And this sheet shows you how to use all of the accessories and items, which is very nice. And this is written in Japanese, but I still pretty much understand the gist of what needs to be done based on the illustrative descriptions here. And don't know what any of this stuff up above mentions, but still pretty self-explanatory on how to use the accessories. Next thing we're going to go ahead and take a look at are the extra hands. There are a total of 4 pairs of hands, and 2 hands that were on the figure were the closed fists right here. One of them is on the figure at the moment. And the extra hands that were in the packages, or in the packaging, is a flat palm, which we have here, and again the other one is on the figure here. And the flat palm is really used for flight posing, and also I guess his battle stances, and they tend to use the flat palm a lot, the Ultras do. But pretty nice on here. And then you also have a pair of emotive hands, sort of emotive hands, or you can say are relaxed hands. These particular hands are sort of a signature for Ultraman Zero when he does his battle pose. He tends to have his fingers positioned this way when about to confront an enemy. At least what I've seen on the show, or movies I should say. And the last pair of hands are gripping hands to grip the various weapon accessories that Ultraman Zero uses. Now I have to mention that the hands, all of the hands, are a bit difficult to take off the figure and put on the figure, or at least the case for my particular figure. It's gotten to the point where I fear that I may be breaking the ball joint off of the wrist of the figure, and I just have to be very careful when replacing each of the hands here. I think either the ball joint's a little bit too big, or maybe the holes on the bottom of the hands are just a little tiny bit too small, and it's really hard to even squeeze it in to the figure. But they are able to fit on there, and once they're on the figure, the hands hold their positions very well. Not any problems with that. The next item we're going to go ahead and take a look at is the extra power meter, or alternate power meter here. Now, if you're familiar with if you're not familiar with Ultraman, they have a power level meter to indicate how much energy they have left to continue battling, or to use any of their special beam type weapons, or any extra attacks. And that's usually on the chest. Sometimes it's on other places, like on Ultra 7 on the forehead. But for Ultraman Zero, it's on the chest here. And you get two power level indicators. You get one in blue, which is basically has sufficient power to do whatever he needs to do. And then you have a warning indicator in red here when they're low in power. And I guess they need a recharge from the star or sun. And it's interesting about these power level indicators. The original reasoning for it is, I guess, to indicate how much power they have. But on the shows, it's interesting how how much power they have in reserve, especially like when they're battling on Earth. It's especially in the earlier shows where they didn't really have that much power to use due to the environment. I guess all of the smog and just pollutants in the Earth's atmosphere prevented a lot of the energy from the star or the sun to reach the Ultra Hero. And they had limited power reserves, at least battling on Earth. Be interesting to know now what their power levels are compared to the 60s, when there was at least a concern in Japan on the pollutants in the air. But these power level indicators on the figure are basically pegged into the chest, and they're rather difficult to remove, just like the hands off the wrists. It's just very tight fitting, and I've even had to get a pair of pliers to be able, or needle nose pliers to be able to pry this thing off of his chest. And that's one of the reasons why I still have this in the packaging, because I never bothered to try to fit it on there. I may in the future, but for now it's very difficult, so I'm not going to pull it out, at least in this video. And but you can see where it's the peg here pegs into the chest of the figure. But that's the power level indicator, or the low power level indicator there. The next thing we're going to take a look at are a pair of weapons that Ultraman Zero utilizes, and these are the Zero Sluggers, very much like his father's Ice Slugger. And these are blades that Ultraman Zero wields, and they're actually part of his head design. If you look at the head here, the crest is actually the part of the Zero Slugger here, and you can see how they match against his head. So when he wants to use these Zero Sluggers, he'll position his arms up high towards here, and then they'll detach and they'll either fling toward an enemy or else go to his hands where he can use these as blades, melee weapon blades. Right here, and it's edged at the very top portion right here. It's supposed to be, and this is made of a softer plastic. You can bend it here and there, and he gets a pair of these while his father Ultra 7 had only one. But it's still cool that he carries on from his father's Eye Slugger, but these are his Zero Sluggers, which is pretty cool. And the hand, the gripping hand that comes included, can grip the Zero Sluggers fairly well. It's a little tight. The fingers are pretty close to the thumb. Let me see if I can squeeze it in here. But if he were to wield it, he'd wield it similar to this, right there. And use the edge as a blade to fight any kaiju or any other type of bad guys. So that's kind of cool. Now, Ultraman Zero does have a beam-like weapon that he can use utilizing the Zero Sluggers when he summons the blades to his chest area. And they connect to his power level meter or indicator over here onto his chest. And he can fire a beam through that on his chest. And it's pretty cool, and it's nice that they included this as a separate piece instead of having to attach it to the power level meter. And you can see the power level meter here in the middle and the two Zero Sluggers off to the side, and you can see how it's pegged here and can be pegged into the figure, which is pretty cool. And I'm going to do this off screen and show you just real quick. Okay, with the Zero Sluggers attached onto his power level indicator there, you can see it's plugged into his chest area, and a beam of energy would actually shoot out from both the sluggers and the power level indicator to fire at a foe, which is pretty cool. And it's nice that they included this as a separate piece instead of having to attach it to the power level indicator. Kind of cool. And the next weapon accessory here is a blade. Almost looks like a batleth. But basically when he combines his Zero Sluggers, joins them together, and through the use of energy resizes it and forms a single blade, melee blade, that he can use to attack foes, which is pretty neat. Now this is made of a little bit harder plastic than the single Eye Slugger, or Zero Slugger, sorry, on here. And so it's a little bit more rigid plastic. It's not too much prone to bending there. And the gripping hand does grip it fairly well, but you really have to work on getting the hand to grip the the blade in the first place, and it takes a little bit of work just due to the narrow fingers on the grip of the hand. I'm not going to do it here because it just really takes a lot of time to actually put the hand onto the blade, but once it's on there, it's a nice secure grip and will not be prone to falling off. But you can see more detail on the blade here. Some sculpted detail here, and it's painted in silver on here. Very neat. Now, whenever Ultraman Zero has his Zero Sluggers in either a blade form or the single blade, or even the burst formation thing here, he would not have the blades on his head, obviously. So the folks at Ultra Act have designed actually an alternative head. Instead of having these detachable from his head like his father's figure, the Ultra 7 figure, where the Eye Slugger was removable from the head, but in this case, Ultra Act sculpted an alternative head, which is pretty cool. And you can see the alternative head here without the Zero Sluggers attached. So whenever you have the figure posed with the Zero Sluggers detached from the head, you would just simply take this head off. It's really more of a face. It's not a true full-size head. You can see the tab there. That's actually just slotted into the bottom half of the head there. And same thing with the alternative head. You got that slot there, and you just slide it on, and it actually fits very well. It's not prone to slipping off until you manually take it off. But once it's on the base head of the figure, you can see it's a nice tight fit. And you have the alternative head there, which is cool. So this is really the proper way to use this head, is when you have the Zero Sluggers detached, or if you take this off here and put the power level on back in. I'll have to do this again off screen. Once you have the power level back into the torso, you can use the single Zero Sluggers on the figure, or the blade on there. So that's really kind of neat to have both heads there without having to detach it from the actual head of the figure itself. So which is pretty cool. Now taking a look at Ultraman Zero here, and this is a nice figure. One of my more favorite of the Ultra Act figures. I grew up watching Ultraman in the 80s, rebroadcasts of the 60s episodes, and but I didn't follow it too long after that, and I just recently got back into the Ultraman mythos sometime last year, and I grew attached to the Ultraman Zero movies. I really liked the first two movies, that Ultraman Galaxy Legend and Revenge of Belial. And those two movies focus on this version of the Ultraman and also his team, Ultimate Force Zero. And I really grew attached to the Ultraman Zero after coming back to watching the Ultraman series. And pardon me while my phone rings there. And it was pretty cool to see that Ultra Act is able to release a slew of Ultraman Zero related figures, and I'm glad to be able to pick these up. And taking a look at Ultraman Zero here, he's got a combination of colors. He's not like most Ultramen where they're primarily red. And here he's a mixture of red, blue, and silver, which is pretty cool. And he's got some nice patterns throughout his suit, which is pretty cool. And starting off with the head sculpt, we can take a look at Ultraman Zero here, and you can see where he inherits much of his father's design, Ultra 7. Starting off, of course, with the crest here. Of course, Ultra 7 had a single crest on the middle, but it looks like Ultraman Zero has two crests, and of course they detach to form his weapons, which is pretty cool, just like his father's. And he also inherits the, I guess, I'm not sure what you would call it for Ultraman Zero, but for Ultra 7, he had one of these on his forehead for his power level indicator. Ultra 7 didn't have one on his chest. But it looks like Ultraman Zero has one on his forehead, but from the two movies that I've seen so far, only the power level indicator on his chest glows red when it's low on power. This one seems to just remain lit a greenish color. And you can see it's painted on there on the head. And here on the eyes, we have some transparent plastic, which is pretty cool. It's yellow with a white spray underneath. If you take the if you take the face off, you can see some white paint sprayed in underneath there. So I guess it's to illuminate, help illuminate the eyes, or pseudo illuminate the eyes here. But it's a yellow transparent plastic with a white background, so it makes the eyes sort of glow, not truly glow, but make it look like it glows. An orange color, or yellowish orange color, so that's kind of cool. And then you also have the sculpted mouth area and ear area. That's more traditional of most Ultras, which is pretty cool. Turning into the back of the head, you can see some nice sculpted design on the head there, and this is not just simply painted on, but it's actually sculpted into the head and painted on top of that, which is pretty cool. And you can see the pattern runs throughout the body, which is pretty nice. Also on the back, you can see the fin. That's more really for in real life the zipper for the suit, but I guess for Ultras they have a back fin on their bodies, and you can see it run from the top of the back of the head to the tail there. But it's pretty neat. It's not more pronounced like his arch nemesis Belial, but it's more closer to his body there. So that's kind of neat. And moving down to the torso area, you of course have the power level indicator there, and you have these shoulder and arm pieces, or armor pieces, which is again inherited from Ultra 7, which is a nice nod to the relationship between 0 and 7. So pretty cool. And I don't know if it's exactly the same or not. Excuse me. It could be a little bit different. I have to look at my Ultra 7 figure to see if it's the same, but it's very similar in design to Ultra 7, so that's kind of cool. And looking here at the lower torso and legs, you can see more of the sculpted pattern that's unique to Ultraman Zero. Very cool on both sides. And these are just like in the head area, sculpted into the figure and then painted, which is very nice. You got the silver paint here, as well as the blue and the reds. I do have to mention that the red here on this abdomen area is a little bit darker than the rest of the red on the figure. And I think it's because of the different type of plastic that's used compared to the rest of the figure here, which is unfortunate. But from a distance, you really don't notice it unless you really look at it. So, but still slightly discolored compared to the rest of the red. Looking down to the legs, to the leggings of the suit, you got that mixture of red, blue, and silver, and the paint is done very well. There's really no bleed that I can see from one color to the next. Which is very nice, very good work on the paint on this figure. Now the red is not painted, that's the actual plastic, but the paint on the blue and the silver is done very, very well. And also, it's kind of nice how the pattern on the leg is actually done very well. It's not broken up too much, it smoothly continues from one part to the other over here, and it's very nicely done on there. Even with the joints on the back of this knee here is in blue plastic, but it's kind of cool that it's actually melds well with the pattern of blue, so that's very, very cool. And then for his feet, they're just simple red plastic on there, so very nice paint and sculpt on this figure. It's very well done. Now for articulation, this figure is articulated fairly well, if not a little tight on the joints. Like I mentioned earlier with the wrists for the hands, a lot of the other joints are very tight as well, except for in this area here. But we'll start with the articulation at the head. The head can go side to side, but not all the way around. You can force it all the way around if you want, but that will usually involve detaching the head from the from the ball joint at the neck like that. So that's where the joint here is not as tight as the rest of the figure, but if you don't stress it too much, it stays on the head fairly well. But you can move the head side to side in normal positions. Why would you put it on backwards? I don't know. But why, or move it to backwards? I don't know why you do that. But anyways, but it does have movement side to side, as well as up and down, and even side to side this way. Yeah, so you get a nice range of movement on the head, and there is a separate joint from the neck and head, so you can move the head looking upwards as well at more extreme angles, and maybe even some flight poses on there. You can have them flying, looking ahead, so that's kind of nice, and it does look down fairly well as well, so that's kind of neat. The arms at the shoulders have a combination of joints, more like a rotational movement at the shoulder, as well as some swivels to allow the arm to go all the way around and out and in, which is nice. There is a bicep articulation, which is covered up with this armor as well, so it hides a lot of that, so that's kind of nice. So you can move that around at the bicep area. And there are double joints at the elbows, which is nice. And the hands have a ball hinge swivel joint, so you can bend the hand in and out, or sideways depending on the hinge position, and can turn all the way around as well. There are two joints in the upper torso area. They're both ball joints, so you can swivel the upper half of the torso around, but not all the way around, as well as up and down and slight side to side. And the joint at the waist, you can do the similar type of movement, downwards, up and back, slight side to side and around, but not all the way around. So that combination can get the most realistic type poses to twists on the side that you can. So that's kind of cool. The legs at the hips have a combination of joints as well, hinged and swivel joints. You can move the leg down or up and down and slightly to the back and out to the side a little bit. And if you pull the hinge down, you can have more extreme upward movement of the leg, down and back, as well as more outward movement, but not too much out to the side. There is rotation at the top of the thigh here as well, so that's kind of nice. There are double joints at the knees, so you can bend the leg back this far out, or this far in, and this far out. And there are ball socketed joints at the ankles to allow upward movement of the foot, but not too much. Downward movement, around movement, as well as ankle pivot, and also toe articulation with a toe hinge. So that's kind of nice. So nice variety of joints that you can pose this figure in some dynamic posing, which is typical for most Ultras. So very cool figure. Very glad to have Ultraman Zero, since I'm a fan of the recent Ultraman Zero related movies, and definite must get if you're a fan of the Ultraman Zero mythos. This is my casual peek into the Ultra Act Ultraman Zero action figure set. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.
I wish we did.